Oh, can you hear me? Testing.
Yeah. Hey, how's it going, my friend?
What's up?
So what is this? What is this I'm looking at? What is this YouTube
uh,
video?
I think that's a pretty awesome info dump that I saw Peon do this morning. It's pretty comprehensive, gives a good look, I think, at a lot of the systems and mechanics in the game.
Is that the
Or
first
maybe
time you saw the video?
no, I saw it when it dropped, like 20 minutes after it dropped. I think I'm
Gotcha.
Pacific Coast, so.
So you appreciate his video?
Oh yeah, I thought he did a pretty good job of concisely kind of explaining a lot of the systems and mechanics and kind of philosophies, I guess, of the development.
Did you have the chance to talk to him before he did the video? Or
Honestly, I didn't talk with him at all. I know that he interacted with a lot of the community members who set up, kind of the community-driven wiki, Shays and Lex, who kind of transcribe the live streams and whatnot. So I know he used that as great source material when he was checking, fact-checking some of his information.
Gotcha. Is there anything like in that video that you would have touched base on a little bit more?
I think so. Before I started Intrepid, right, and before I began the project, which has now been about 5 years ago. I mean, I've been playing MMOs since I was 7 years old. Back in like 1992, I played my first one was Neverwinter when it was $6 by the hour on AOL to play, right?
That was a thing. I never knew about that.
Yeah, that was the thing. But I think what I probably would have touched on is patience is necessary when building a game of this size. I mean, the thing is pardon my French, it's fucking huge. It is a huge game. There's a lot of systems, a lot of mechanics, and it takes a lot of people to create it. So it's understandable. There's a lot of skepticism behind like whether or not we can pull it off. But I think as we approach, the alphas and the betas that we're getting into now, I think people are finally seeing, in the gameplay that we dropped just last month, which was 2 hours of unedited 4K footage. They're starting to see a lot of these systems come alive. And for me, my main motivating factor in building this team to create this game has been that I, as an MMO player, was simply just fed up with what I was eating by these companies. And I wanted to create something that I think would resonate with a lot of people.
Those are the best kinds of games.
I mean, a game that you want to make is...
Yeah, it's an avid player in a certain genre, and they're just tired of it. Like game after game after game, just garbage. And then you're like, you know what? I'm going to do it better.
That's how I feel about EFT.
And I never understood it, too, because you'd imagine that a lot of these games, right, are headed or take input from serious gamers that are MMORPG fanatics, and they tell them, like, hey, don't destabilize the player-driven economy by adding something to the microtransaction shop. Or, hey, players don't want to see, everybody win a reward or not have to spend any time or dedication, risk versus reward components, right? Like, you would think that they would have focus groups that would tell them these things, but they either that doesn't affect their bottom line the way they want to, or they are just missing the mark because they're not driven by gamers.
They're getting told all the wrong stuff. Someone's telling them the wrong information on what makes a good game, I guess. That's what the intriguing thing is. It's all the ideas that this game has, right? It's like, even just like the simplest thing of having open world PvP is so huge to me. Is crazy, And the idea and the punishment system, the idea that you can even drop loot if you are in that, what is that state called?
Corrupt.
Corrupt.
Corruption.
That's like a Legion or like
MMOs. One of my favorite MMOs was Lineage 2.
Lineage 2, I was going to say,
Lineage 2 did in my opinion, a great job in balancing the player agency to kill anybody anywhere, right? Because it was a non-faction based game, but it had a downside, right? It was a risk versus reward scenario. The reward was you got to kill the person. The risk was now you're corrupt. You can drop your items. This is a conscious decision that you as a player have to make, and there are consequences. That type of consequence-driven interaction is important, I think. But at the same time, on the flip side, you can't just be entirely PvP minded as a game, right? You have to provide players with many different progression paths that they can, you know, enjoy their time in the game with. So having an in-depth and meaningful, you know, artisan or crafting system with some serious competitive rating PvE content, as well as having those PvP systems, creates a really healthy population so that all sides are kind of satisfied.
Absolutely, I agree. Everybody kind of needs each other.
Yeah. You know, that's the thing is like, you know, as we're building this stuff, you know, as a game, and not a lot of games show early development like this, because it's a two-sided sword. Like on one end, you have the benefit of, you know, players like yourself and the communities that you guys represent have an opportunity to watch things, give feedback, and kind of express their opinions on things. And that's great because the iteration process that us as developers go through, we can take that into account and make sure that we're not steering the ship incorrectly, right? And that we don't end up 3 months out from our open beta and we have to delay by a year or two because there are systems in place that the community doesn't like. But on the flip side of that, you have to also understand, you know, the other side of the sword is that this is an active development, and development of games is not pretty. It is a crazy process, something I had no idea about, you know, over 5 years ago. But when I pulled people over from Sony Online Entertainment or from Blizzard, you know, these great developers that aren't responsible sometimes for the decisions that the companies make, but they are amazing all-star developers. You know, they come on board and they've taught me a whole new world. It's like been crazy.
I believe it. Yeah, especially in MMO. I mean, if you have no prior experience on being ahead on any video games or anything, like having any ideas on them or stuff, or do you?
I'm sorry, so you cut out for me that 1 second. What was that?
I'm sorry. Do you have any prior experience in the video game world besides just playing them before this? So your big first thing is like this huge MMO project.
You know, okay, so it's a really funny story, right? Because when I was playing a game called ArcAge, and I was really like in love with the potential that ArcAge had, and it just got so undermined by, in my opinion, really bad design choices.
Absolutely.
And it kind of, that's what, you know, I was retired at the time. I was 28, 29. I was 29. I'm 35 right now. But I was 29 and I was playing this game, and I was so pissed at the design decision, the choices in the like recent updates. It just kept deteriorating my community, and my guild members were quitting the game. And I finally was at a point where I was just like, you know, I don't even want to play anymore if my friends are quitting this game. So I was thinking to myself, you know, man, I'm connected with these developers here in San Diego who work at Sony Online and work at other, you know, studios and whatnot. And I used to play a lot of tabletop games with them. I used to play like Warhammer Fantasy and 40K and shit. So I was asking them, I was like, hey, you guys, you're like the lead programmer on PlanetSide 2, right? And you've built like EverQuest, and you worked on Blizzard and on WoW and stuff. I was like, let's get together and make a game, make an MMO. It's like, I'll fund the thing. Well, I got these great design ideas, you know, and I'm pulling inspiration from all the MMOs that I've played in the past. Let's build this thing. So we spent that was 2015. We spent the first couple of years just kind of like white papering out all of the designs, you know, the design ideas that I had for Ashes. And then really we started, you know, we had about 13, 15 people when we went to Kickstarter in 2017. And really, Kickstarter wasn't a means to fund the project. It was more along the lines of like adding additional features, but also getting a litmus test of the community. Like, hey, you know, I think this would be a great game, but like, do you think these ideas are good? And we had an overwhelming, you know.
Yeah, I remember that. It was crazy.
Yeah, so that's when we really ramped up and started adding a shit ton of developers to the project.
That's crazy. And with the good ideas, oh man, I like the ideas. The node system's crazy. Shroud thinks eventually the meta will take over and all the nodes will be a thing. But
that's an interesting thought, because you know, when I was coming up with this node system, none of these ideas are revolutionary. It's not like the technology hasn't been present for them to be incorporated into game design, right? It's not like we're trying to build, you know, EverQuest Next, where you have these, you know, these fractal structures all throughout the world that just are not possible.
They just simply haven't been thought about.
Exactly. They haven't been brought in together. So when we're thinking about like node infrastructure, basically the node structure throughout the world, the way that the algorithm kind of expands the territories takes into account a few things. One, it takes into account the coast, like where's the closest coast. Two, it takes into account like the neighboring nodes, so it can take over and essentially vassal state those nodes. But what's more important is essentially the initial population based on like how players choose their races, because we have 9 different races and 4 different starting points that branch out. Each server's population density is going to dictate essentially the first few nodes that are highly populated, and then that initial seed is what's going to determine the node structure as it moves inland into the world, essentially. And based on like the performance and successes of different sieges will determine which nodes that got locked out from the initial advancements, what nodes can now be available to advance further. So I really think that with so many variables that are present in the equation of how nodes advance and stay existing, with the more variables you have, the higher likelihood there is for there to be a significant diversion in world progression.
Okay.
Do you ever see a world in which node progression is going too fast, and you get to, like, maybe it's not tested properly or whatever happens, right? And all the nodes get filled up to max way too quickly or relatively high. Is there ever a world where you guys would consider wiping or decreasing, or you just let the game play out at that point?
Well, okay, that's a very good question. First things first is the way that nodes collect significant amount of experience from their zones of influence, and then plugs that into the threshold system that essentially determines when nodes advance to the next stage. That algorithm takes into account the average heat mapping of players in the surrounding area over a set period of time that we determine. So we can determine that heat map as the past week or the past month or whatever, and that can change a little bit of the dials. Additionally, one important component of how nodes, essentially take into account their advancement and whether or not we would want to change them. There's not going to be a time where we would come in and essentially wipe the server. The only time that would be, possible is essentially if servers need to merge, and then we would have a parent server that's determined, and the sub servers that get wiped and merged into the parent server. So that's really going to be dependent on whether or not servers experience any like downfall in population. But we're going to be very cognizant on the launch day to not overpopulate the server selection in a way that creates the likelihood of servers having to be merged. That's kind of, one of the things we have to be very vigilant about.
Okay. And well, I saw that like in the video that it was like 8,000 to 10,000 people per server, give or take.
Yeah.
Is there going to be a world in which it's going to be kind of challenging to play with your friends because you can't get on a server because it's full? Like imagine a streamer server. It's going to be freaking bonkers, right?
Right. And that's part of the equation of essentially watching to make sure that we don't overpopulate the server selection, but at the same time making sure that there's not a queue system in place that's so long that it's detrimental to the concurrency and the player's will to play, so to speak. It's a tough balancing act. A lot of companies that are MMO companies, they don't get it right, it just takes some finesse. It takes some finesse, and we have to watch it and see what's happening at that time. But there will be a queue system in place, and if we were to err on the side of longer queues versus more server selection options, we're going to err on the side of longer queues because it's a greater destabilization to the game if servers have to merge, because those are whole populations. And that 8 to 10,000 mark, that's the 8 to 10,000 concurrency, right? So essentially you're going to have still, around 50,000 accounts that are allowed to register characters on a server select, and then hope that concurrency doesn't go too high.
Gotcha. I have a question. How's gear going to work in this game? How will is there going to be like PvP benefit ones from like battlegrounds, PvE gear from raids or dungeons, and will they correlate together and work together, or would it be more like this is your PvE set, this is your PvP set?
We're not really going to have a sense of PvP versus PvE sense. They're all universal in their stat progression for both instances of PvE versus PvP. Just from a balancing sense, that makes most sense to us. There will be PvP specific benefits that you can apply through a socketing system into gear. And those types of benefits are acquired based on performance in certain PvP related events. So, for example, guilds can progress in levels, and based off of your guild's stats and wars that you've completed, as well as your individual stats in those wars, will determine your ability to purchase guild specific enchantment stones that can then be applied temporarily to your gear and have PvP focused benefits. Same is true for arena based system, where you can join in different types of either solo arenas or 3v3s or 5v5s, and based on your performance in the arena leadership ladder, at the end of a month will determine your type of benefits that you can acquire that will be time limited. So, you know, it's not as though you're going to necessarily acquire these once and then you're set for your PvP enchantments, but instead you'll have to continually perform month after month in order to keep having those slotted enchantments.
Gotcha. Damn. Okay.
And then same is true for the node wars as well as the castle siege events. Also, the caravan system that is, you know, utilized for transiting goods from region to region. Those caravan events, you can participate either as a highway brigand or as a defender, and each of those paths will have unique enchantment stones for PvE that are determined by your performance in a given period of time, in either helping caravans complete their mission or attacking them and looting them for a portion of their goods.
Interesting. Okay.
By
I do like the caravan.
By performance of the enchants, do you mean like there's eventually going to be a cap of some, like is there going to be a cap, or if you perform, you know, even better than you did one time and you did the best last time, would the enchant go higher? You know what I'm saying?
Right. So there's a score that gets reset in a season, and the season consists of multiple months, right? So from your first month, you could potentially max out your contribution and get the best stones available in that method. But then as you go into month 2 and month 3 and month 4, your score becomes cumulative, and that achievement, you'll have an achievement rank as well as a purchasing power. The achievement rank will unlock other stones until the season resets.
Season as in the weekly seasons is what you're talking about?
No,
or?
so there's initially they're going to be 6-month seasons, and then over that 6-month period of time, you'll have a cumulative score that unlocks what applicable enhancements you'll have access to based on the certain systems. So whether that be the arena system, whether it be the guild war system, or the caravan highway quest system.
Jeez, that's another world that I didn't even talk about.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how many more things there are in the back end that we have no idea about.
let's just say the game design document is very, very, very large.
I believe it. I'm trying to think of what other questions I got. Wait, did I hear 40 man?
40 man raids, yeah.
Yeah.
The encounters for world bosses and some of the sieges, they're intended to be 40-man raid sizes, so 5 groups of 8, and our group sizes are 8.
Oh, nice.
Oh.
What's the best MMO that you have played that's kind of, that you look back on and you're like, damn, this MMO was the most fun I've had in an MMORPG?
Darkfall.
Darkfall, really?
Uh-huh.
Isn't that full loot drop?
Yeah. I mean, it was like a sandbox, you know, like sandbox sieges.
Kind of rusty.
It was literally like, yeah, like Rust. Like you'd have your own crafters that would build, you know, your siege gear, your leveling gear, and if you were ballsy, if you were ballsy, you'd bring out like bigger gear just to quest and do random bullshit. But there's always a chance that a group will kill you and you lose it all. It was very, very punishing, almost too punishing, but it's very memorable. You know, that's what I liked about it. It was very memorable.
Yeah.
Okay. To be honest, I don't really have one besides like WoW Classic, but I would say WoW Vanilla. But I mean, I've played little things like, you know, I've played a little Ragnarok online. I like some little things from some certain MMOs I've dabbled in. You know, what I mean, Lineage 2, shit like that. But I've never gotten Endgame on those games, and the only game I've ever played Endgame on was WoW Vanilla. So. Feels bad, man, but I wish I could go back in time and change a lot of that. But too much Counter-Strike.
Yeah, that was always the big one. I remember when I was playing CS too, like you'd be on a team and whether you were Calo, Cal IM, they would always tell you to stay away from WoW because there's always the people who play WoW and they used to be so good at CS, they'd come back and they were garbage, you know?
Yep.
So that's
Like
why
I
our
remember
MMO
complexity.
time back then is rough, you know? We were too focused on CS.
Yeah, but
You know, I never really got into WoW because I really was at that time, like 2003 circa, I was playing Lineage 2 a lot. And the faction-based system didn't appeal to me as much. I felt like when I was playing WoW that I was kind of like told who my friends and enemies were, and oftentimes, like the people on my own faction were the people, you know, that I did dislike the most.
you wanted to kill them.
True.
Exactly. That's why I liked Lineage 2 because you know, that was more of a guild-driven system. It was non-faction based, so you could, you know, it was really up to you to determine your friends and enemies.
Gotcha. Yeah, I like that. I like the idea of being able to kill who I want to. I liked when I played Terra, when I played BDO, just being able to smack somebody whenever I wanted was nice. Got into some.
Oh, yeah.
One of my favorite thing about an MMO is not even my favorite thing, but one of the greatest things about an MMO was leveling, and while leveling, being able to PvP and kill people randomly while they're leveling, because it like gives me something else to do besides just the mindless grind. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm gonna go kill that guy real quick. And it's good. You know what I mean? Yeah, like Stranglethorn Veil, WoW Vanilla, STV. You know
that was part. I mean, honestly, what you just described was part of the best like monotony breaker that grinding was. Like if you had to worry about your area that you're farming in being contested, like that was fun. If somebody tried to jump out of the bush and gank your ass and you had to like stay on your toes, you know, and that dude would keep coming back, or you would have to die and run back, and it was just like emotional roller coaster of anger and like success. That was the fun part.
It would just be a reminder that that fuck, man, this is badass. You know what I mean? So sometimes you just grind it and you get you know, you just get into this autopilot mode and you're not having as much fun as you would like. But when you just randomly getting some PvP session, it's just like a reminder, like, hell yeah, dude, this is sick. That's why I play this. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I'm a huge fan of. Well, I've never even thought about like being a fan of no faction until you kind of put it like that. But because WoW, I was always down just to kill a bunch of alliance dudes. But,
oh yeah. Well, if you think about it, if you don't have a faction in place, you have like in Ashes, you have a lot of pseudo factions. You have nodes that you're a citizen of, right? And nodes can declare war on each other. So your citizen groups become essentially enemies, or they can forge alliances where you help defend their nodes or participate in trade runs and shit. Or you can have guilds that are pseudo factions where you can declare war on other guilds, or you can form alliances in that regard. You have societies and organizations. So you have like a thieves guild or scholars academy. And in Ashes, when you join one of those societies, you can climb the ladder in the ranking system and title system within those societies or organizations. And as you do so, you unlock access to different, either shops to purchase from, or even augments for your skills, roles within sieges that you can play. And then you have like quest lines that make you an adversary. If you're in let's say the Scholars Academy, there are quest lines that make you go try to steal something from the Thieves Guild, or try to essentially assault another guild. So kind of creating these pseudo factions takes the place where we present the player with these soft friction events, and that determines who your friends and your foes are.
Interesting. Okay.
And that could be temporarily too, right?
Correct. Yeah, and that's part of the ebb and flow of yeah, exactly. I mean, in the games I played, right, a lot of times servers become a little two-sided if they don't have factions. They become two-sided in the sense where, you have this like struggle against a group of people that you don't like for a period of time, and you fight each other or whatever. Lineage 2 is a lot like that, but things can change. I mean, it all depends on what's happening, right? If there's like a common enemy or a castle you want to take, or you forge some backroom deal or alliance with the leaders, like having that flexibility to be driven by the players, that is fun.
Yeah, for sure. No, it sounds like a pretty cool system. How much of the like quote unquote end game is playable early? Because I'm assuming there's stuff you could only do at max. Or is it all achievable and you can all, do it and it scales like most games?
Is there scaling?
Yeah.
So there's not scaling. I'm
Thank
not a
God.
fan of scaling.
I'm not either. I'm not either.
Yeah, I think it diminishes, you know, that advancement feeling that you get when you like can go kill that red monster that you couldn't before, you know, or this dungeon is untouchable until you're best in slot or something. But on the side of essentially like end game material, there's a lot of different progression paths, right? It's not just all about your adventuring class, so to speak, and maxing the level there. On the artisan front, there's like three different types of, there's three different trees that exist in the artisanship family. There's gathering, processing, crafting. You know, crafting's really dependent on the advancement of nodes. Processing's really dependent on the infrastructure you set up on your freehold system. So like building, processing blueprints and getting materials to build that up. And the gathering is really focused around tool creation, your ability to like gather higher grade items or to transit the raw materials from region to region gives you a very Star Wars Galaxy-esque type of grade system.
Would you say that like there's gonna be I almost like it almost like reminded me of like life skilling in BDO. Is there just going to be people that like commit their times to like stuff like this and in the early days and
if people so it's funny because I think it was a couple of streams ago I had a question about like what would you say the best course to take as a guild is at the start of a server for Ashes? And the answer that I gave there was like, it really depends on what your objectives and goals are. So will there be people no-lifing, you know, these systems within nodes? I'm 100% positive there is. Like when I used to play Arcade, you know, 5-6 years ago, you know, we had people, we had a wide tent guild. So we weren't like PvP specifically focused, but we had PvP players. So we kind of like partitioned them off into a section of the guild where they just did PvP things. And then we had people who wanted to manage like all the guild lands and do the farms and crop rotations and do the crafting and all that kind of stuff, right? So in that similar sense, you know, in Ashes, there's a lot of different, like I said, progression paths. If you want to focus on the crafting side, you can. If you want to focus on the citizenship side and your advancement within those societies or organizations, you can. If you want to focus on building the guild levels so that you have greater passive skills that you can allocate to your guild members or that you have access to better guild shops, you can.
Well, that leads me to another question then. How is gear gonna work when it comes to bind on account, when it comes to auction house stuff, and how is gold or your money system is it going to be like? Because there's some MMOs where money is king, and there's some MMOs where money is just like luxury. You know what I mean? Is it going to play a big part in endgame?
Yeah, so money will play a big part in the endgame. However, with that being said, there are organizational specific currencies that can't be traded. So there is like a general gold that will be very important end game, but then there's also your progression within certain religions, societies, or nodes will also have. And it's funny if any Ashes community members are listening, this is probably new info for them. But there will be progression-based currencies as well. The other thing about the game that's a little bit different is monsters don't drop gold per se. They drop essentially what are hunting certificates. And these certificates can drop on your character's death. A portion of them will drop on your character's death. And you can accrue enough and you can move those certificates and trade them to a hunter NPC that exists in the node systems throughout the world. But if you move the certificates through the caravan to a further distant node, you can get a higher return on those certificates. And you can also store those certificates within your warehouse that exists within a node. And if the node gets sacked during that time, a portion of those certificates will be lost and looted by the attackers.
Oh, so that's like if you have a house in a place that, like in a city that gets attacked and torn down, you can lose a portion of your stuff. Or
correct, so essentially raw goods and processed goods, materials and raw gatherables, those are at risk on your character as well as in warehouses. So it's very important for the citizens to forge relationships and alliances so that if they do get sieged, that they can defend those goods. And when a siege gets declared, the warehouse system for gatherables and materials become locked. So you can't just go and rip everything out after a siege is declared.
So it sounds like this game is very, very, very encouraged of like group play, or whether you are a solo player and you need assistance, you gotta vocally talk to people and find out people like. So does that mean if you are somebody that hates people, okay, and you want to play by yourself, is it gonna suck? You know what I mean?
So I mean, that's a good question, right?
Sorry, girlfriend's in me.
MMORPGs are
She
by
got that headache is
nature
back.
multiplayer, and they require some, in my opinion, they should require some sort of interaction with your community. Now, it doesn't have to be social. You don't have to be friends with those people. You don't have to work with them. You can still solo play, right? But there are going to be many systems that exist in Ashes where you become a part of some type of group. So just from the sheer fact that you will want to be a citizen at some node, and you can only ever be a citizen at one node, right? There will be a cooldown period if you renounce your citizenship. But when you become a citizen of one node, you're going to now participate in that citizenship specific chat. You're going to be a member of a small community, and you can still solo play, but you're going to be a part of that small pseudo-faction, so to speak.
So you're forced into a community no matter what. I like it personally because, like, you're right. MMORPGs are about, you know, the amount of
socializing,
players,
all that stuff.
the sheer scale
Absolutely.
of it. You know,
Having
why
to
would you just play
interact
yourself?
to continue forward. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Well, in some
100%.
aspects, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I was gonna
Sorry,
say,
go
as long as you just don't as long as you ease them into a community, and it sounds like that's kind of easing them in. That's not like forcing it over their head.
Correct.
So it's as long as you ease it in, they'll start to like it, I think.
So I have a
That's
question
Absolutely.
now regarding combat. You say that you've gotten, you know, some developers over there from like Blizzard, from SOE, stuff like that. Have
Yeah.
you gotten anybody over there who's, you know, fairly notable in PvP like MMO games? Who and how do they feel, or if you do, you know, or how does one feel about the combat in your current game when it comes to PvP, PvE, the tab system versus the combat system, or like the full
Right.
action? You know what I mean?
Yep. So one of the things I was saying earlier about how open development is a double-edged sword. Combat is the most important system to get right in a game. And the reason why is because it's the most tactile and interacted with system that the player will experience in the game. It is something that you're doing almost constantly, right, in order to progress along either certain quest lines or just adventuring class, you know, PvP interaction, whatever. Everything you do in some way, shape, or form, you know, will come back essentially to that combat system. So in an open development, right, the best way to achieve a good combat system is through constant testing and iteration. You know, there was a lot of controversy around our apocalypse mode, which really was born out of the fact that we wanted to get combat right. And because we're going for a hybrid-based system that utilizes both projectile hit scan, ray tracing, the everything that goes into essentially making a good action-based system, which is something that is difficult to blend into a tab-targeted system, and the hybrid type of, you know, goal we have for Ashes of Creation. We wanted to make sure that we got it right. So what you're seeing in some of this gameplay, like the 4K footage we put out last month, right? That's like the first step iteration towards our hybrid system. And the idea is that players will have skill points. They can take those skill points, they can allocate them into their skill tree, and they can choose to be predominantly action-based or tab targeting based. Now, tab targeting and action have very different speeds, tempos, right? So the difficulty in making a hybrid system is finding the right tempo between the two and making sure that we house the CC systems, the crowd control abilities, within certain types of tab targeting or action-based skills so that they can't be abused. When you combine that with a system that is essentially, oh God, I can't think of the top of my head, but is essentially the mitigating returns that you have for CC effects, then you need to blend those things together. So what people are seeing early on is going to be that first iteration. As we continue forward, we blend it further, we iterate on it more, and it becomes a little bit better. But we are fully aware that from a combat standpoint, that is the most important thing to get right. And yeah, we have a lot of devs with great experience on combat systems. I mean, we have a lot of devs from PlanetSide 1 and 2. We have a lot of devs from EverQuest. We have a lot of devs from, Star Wars Galaxies, DC Universe. You know, a lot of people, the vast majority of our people come from MMORPG development, and they have, 20-year histories in creating these games.
Gotcha. So do you guys, like, when you hire someone, do you give these guys like the like a test. They have to answer all these questions, right? Like, yo, what kind of MMO you like? You know? Do you like PvP or do you like PvE? You know, like, are you a guy that only does this, or you know what I mean? Do you give them the run?
So I think I've gotten a little bit of a reputation among my studio, as you know, the way our hiring structure works initially is, you know, and it's so funny actually, yes, it's because we just launched our next hiring phase. We put up about 24 positions to add to our already
Oh, hell yeah,
over 60
congrats.
plus in-house developers. Thanks. But our application process is actually, you know, people apply, they send in the resume, cover letter, right? They get filtered based off of the necessary requirements and experience first, and then they get sent to the first stage kind of interview where one of the leads of the appropriate departments will interview them. Then they're given a test for that position. So it could be a design test, could be an art test, could be an engineering code test. And then based off of the results of that test, they'll go to a second interview stage. And then at the second interview stage, I will get a write-up that's essentially a review, where on 1 through 10 we'll go through different, you know, points of the applicant, and then if the recommendation is to hire, I'll have a final interview with them. Usually my interview with them revolves around what's your passions, why are you in the gaming industry, what type of games did you play, what MMOs did you like best, what did you like about, you know, these types of things, so I can gauge their commitment level as a developer on the project. Because as part of like forming a good culture that is a game made by gamers, you know, you want to make sure that people have the relevant knowledge and experience that they can relate to when they're building systems, designs, characters, whatever, on Ashes of Creation. And if they don't have that, then you're missing a little bit of a spark there. And you know, I think that's important. That's why I have pretty dedicated, you know, developers at the studio.
I feel like the name of this game finally like comes together now that I've seen like some of the stuff on it. You know what I mean? Ashes of Creation. You're like the whole freaking player base is just creating it. You know?
Oh yeah, 200 IQ Dave. Shit, I didn't even think about that. Damn, cheeky.
That was a good observation.
That's good. I like that.
But yeah, big steps. It's pretty crazy systems that you guys have in mind. You know what I mean? To show the world. Very freaking interesting. And if it's got the lazy peon interested, it's also interesting because, you know, that guy plays MMOs. You know. Day after
he plays
day.
the shit out of some MMOs. But yeah, no, I mean, we appreciate, you know, people following along. The great thing about the game is that, you know, there's no pay to win structure whatsoever in the game. So like, if people want to just keep watching and give their input, that's what we suggest people to do, right? You don't have to buy a package. You don't have to be an alpha and beta. There's no box price to the game. It's only going to be subscription based. So there's a very low barrier to entry as well. And you know, people just watching along, giving their input. That's what we enjoy as developers, because every piece of, you know, response we get from a community is important.
I have another question.
Yeah.
Coming from an MMO gamer to an MMO developer, do you think that you could, after watching this for the last 5 years, step by step by step by step, still enjoy the game to its fullest extent, like you would have? You think?
You know, it's probably not possible. The one thing I would say is this: there's two elements to playing an MMO in my experience. There's on the one side, there's the achievement and progression element, where you go through the story, you discover cool things, you explore the world, you know, you get your levels up and you unlock new abilities, and you know, that type of new experience is always gratifying. It has a good dopamine kind of response to it, right?
Mystery. Yeah.
I don't think I'll ever be able to. I don't think I'll ever be able to experience that and enjoy it, because, you know, I'm very integral in every component of, you know, creating the experience on that front. But on the flip side of that coin, there's the player driven experience, and there's the friendships that are forged, and there's the enemies that are, you know, created, and there is the achievements of taking, you know, castles from a guild, or you know, being the best in your performance for a raid, or, you know, whatever. On that front, I think I will be able to enjoy the game.
Yeah, there's a lot of unknown until the community makes something of it.
Exactly.
And that's the excitement right there. So you know everything about the game. You've been working on it for years. So you lost that.
Yes.
But there's going to be so many things that are forged from the community because of how the game's made.
Absolutely.
That's going to be the excitement for you.
Okay.
Yes, that is absolutely right.
You're so
Like you
honest,
think you'll
dude.
be able to
Most
you think
people
you'll be
would
able to
lie.
go into boss fights and just dick them because you know all their animations, you know exactly.
No, I don't really want to participate in the game in that sense, right?
Okay, gotcha.
I feel like I will participate in the game, and kind of what Shroud was explaining. I'll have that mystery of whatever the players as a community kind of, set as an experience, as an environment.
You're gonna be
And I
chilling
think
on
I'll
the
enjoy
game.
that for sure.
You're gonna be
Oh
casual.
yeah, oh yeah,
Oh, that's cool, man. Okay, I like that.
yeah.
Okay, I'm trying to think of anything else I have. I really, really, really like that I can kill anybody whenever I want to. That is
Well, is
humongous
it
for me.
whenever you
I think,
want,
dude,
or
it
is it
takes
only if
it.
they're flagged?
I think you flag.
Well,
He has no choice.
so the way it works is players will exist out in the open, and they will be in a non-combatant state, right? So they'll have a normal name color. It'll
Okay.
be green. If you roll up and you see somebody and you want to attack them, you can attack them, right? And your name will now change to a purple color. You'll flag essentially. Now, what this does is it lets anybody attack you, and they'll flag as well. They'll become a combatant, right? And if anybody dies while they're flagged, there's no harm done. You actually lose less from an experience standpoint. You drop less material and gatherables, not your items, not completed items. So it encourages reciprocation in fighting, right?
Wait, time out. Before we
Yeah,
move
go
on,
ahead.
you're telling me you kill people, they can drop just like little potions and stuff, even if they're a
Yeah,
combat a
no,
combatant?
a potion is a completed item. So the only
Okay.
thing you could drop, you'll drop a portion of, is your gathered resources. So those are like plants and rocks or stone
Okay.
or gems, stuff like that you have yet to put into your warehouse. And then, or your
Oh.
processed goods. So essentially, a processed good is, let's say I take that, that iron or that mithril, and I go create with my freehold. I put it into my smelter, and I create, these ingots of those, which
Okay.
are then able to be used alongside recipes for crafting certain things.
Okay.
Right. So you can drop a lesser portion of the materials and a greater portion of the raw gatherables.
Dude, so you can it's kind of like Rust or like War Z. You have to kind of like make it back to town safe and get all your stuff back into your spot and
Exactly. However, this is what I would say. So when you attack another person and you flag and they fight you back, right? No corruption can be gained from that. That's consensual PvP. People are engaging that. But if the person does not fight back and you continue to attack them and you kill them without them having flagged, at that point you gain corruption. And corruption is a stat that accrues depending on two things. One, the number of previous kills you have, PKs where people didn't fight back, and two, the level difference between you and the target that you killed, right? So if you kill a much lower level person, you're going to gain much more corruption. Now, corruption has a few effects on a player. One, if you have corruption, you now have the ability to drop completed gear that you're wearing if you die. Okay, so there's a small percentage chance that when you die, you'll drop, like, let's say, your gloves, or a lesser chance of dropping your weapon, right?
Yeah.
And then what happens as well is the death penalties that happen from a normal death get quadrupled if you're corrupt and you die. So there is experience debt that can be gained from death, and you'll gain 4 times that experience debt if you die while corrupt. Additionally, your location as a corrupt player is broadcast to the bounty hunters of the world. So there are 4 different node types, of which one is a military node type. The military node type comes with a bounty hunter system that players can opt into and progress in. While they're a bounty hunter, they see the location of corrupt players in the world, and they can chase them down and fight. And then there are benefits for the corrupt player and or the bounty hunter based off of their success in killing one another. And the corrupt player doesn't gain more corruption for killing bounty hunters. Bounty hunters are always flagged to corrupt players.
Dude, that's so cool. That's almost like people will be able to make their money just being mercenaries in your game, dude. Just
right. So yeah, the flagging system actually really discourages griefing in the sense of PKing players. So in Lineage 2, Lineage 2 had a very similar system called Karma. And Karma didn't have some of these components to them, but you rarely saw in Lineage 2 people going red. I mean, it happened, right? But it wasn't all the time. It wasn't super prevalent. You didn't go out of town each day and worry about getting PK'd. So, in that sense, we put a little bit more safety nets here to kind of discourage griefing and encourage consensual PvP, right? Those death penalties get halved. You lose less items if you fight back. These are some of the systems in place to kind of encourage that.
That's freaking cool. So much fun.
Yeah, so that's corruption can be cleared in two ways. Corruption either is cleared by dying, so whenever you die, you're going to lose a portion of that corruption.
That's the bitch
right?
way. Okay, what's the next one?
That's the bitch way. And then the second way is if you have a group of friends or you go and you find a spot where you can evade the bounty hunters for a period of time, you can gain experience, and gaining experience will slowly decrease your corruption score.
Hell yeah, so you grind it out.
Correct, you grind it out. Right, and that creates a fun kind of experience for the bounty hunters to try to catch you while you're working it off.
I like it.
So what's the gain there of even taking the risk to grief somebody? Get materials from.
So let's say, So I mean, there's a couple of reasons why this mechanic, to allow that PK to exist is important. One, as we know, in non-faction based games, you make enemies and you make friends, and sometimes your hatred for your enemies is so great that you just want to kill them whenever you see them, regardless of the consequences.
True.
Right?
I'm gonna have a list.
It doesn't even matter to me that I'm going to potentially lose my gear if I can't stand this person so much, or they've done something wrong. I want to go and kill them. Providing that freedom, as long as you're aware of the cost-benefit ratio, is important to player agency, in my opinion. Right? Yeah. That's one method. The second reason why it might be important is there are very rare, unique spawns of gatherable goods that exist within the world. And you may see a person who's gathering it, right? And you may want to kill them to get a portion of the gatherable good that they got. And then actually, I guess there's a third reason. The third reason would be some hunting grounds are prime hunting grounds. So it may take you an hour to get inside this open world dungeon and get down to like the heart of this dungeon that has the best grinding room for your group. And you've made it down. You spent the hour to get yourself down there, and another group shows up 30 minutes later, or there's a group there, and you're like, oh, fuck these guys.
Dude, hell them, right? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Oh, that's cool. Okay, question. Have you ever, is the world going to feel really big? I know, like, you can talk about how big a world is all day, but it also matters, like, the speed of your character, how big you are, and is it going to feel real, like, spacey, kind of like, wow? I noticed that in ESO, I feel like it's the opposite. I feel like I'm always on a road, and I'm never out in, like, some random area. Would you guys say that your maps are pretty open?
Yeah, the maps are very open. Actually, if we've had some pre-alpha testing leading up to the alpha 1 testing we're going to have at the end of this year, and some of our testers, they've been kind of going through one of these dungeons on what we call our alpha island. Is massive. I mean, it's huge. Like just from a sheer I'm not talking like surface area. I'm talking like height, width, everything. You're inside this giant, dungeon. And I think that type of monolithic, experiences when you're entering certain areas contributes to that awe immersive feeling.
Absolutely.
And you don't want to see everything that's tiny and small. That's not as grand.
Right. I just like sometimes MMOs just cannot quite grasp like getting me this huge world adventure feel, and it doesn't always. People have a hard time doing that. So it's a big thing that not a lot of people think about, to be honest.
Yeah, I feel like most games they start with it and the grand feeling's there, but then over time they casual it up and then they introduce like WoW flying, for example, and it just eliminated everything.
Flying destroyed
Final
that game.
Fantasy also has that.
Yes.
So like my next question there is that you said that the video said that there's only like 10 or so people on the whole server that have flying mounts. Does that mean there's 10 or so people?
But he said temporarily too. Am I wrong that I heard that?
Well, yeah, it is temporary. So there's 3 methods by which people can attain the flying mounts. One is you're a guild leader of a guild that owns a castle, right? There's 5 castles out there. Guild leaders have the benefit that they can
Well, boys,
summon
we're making a
essentially
guild.
this giant, dragon, or there's
I
going to be
expect
different
all of you
types
to
that you can
join
have, which each have
and
PvP
get me a
relevance
flying
during
mount.
sieges. So they'll have massive AoE effects. They'll have the ability to kind of fly around the battleground and stuff.
Oh
and direct
shit!
people.
Like a straight up like leader. Like
Yeah,
God,
like a huge ass dragon. And then the second group of people that can acquire these large flying mounts are mayors of metropolises. And metropolises are the highest stage of node development you can achieve. There can only ever be 5 metropolises on a server at a given time without they don't have to be destroyed. So that's 10 right there, and those are temporary. So like mayor gets elected, guild leaders can be supplanted, whatever, or taken out by other guilds who take the castle. So those are temporary. Then in addition to that, legendary bosses will drop these royal mounts. They're called royal mounts. Legendary bosses will drop eggs. And these eggs can be cultivated through the animal husbandry system, essentially through a certain quest line that exists within the animal husbandry system. If you have a high enough stable upgrade on your freehold.
Oh, I love it. I just love all these requirements. Keep doing requirements. I love it.
They can be cultivated into a lifetime specific flying mount. So once it gets to a grown stage, you'll have a 30-day between a 15 to 30-day lifetime on the mount, and that variable is determined by the efficacy of your animal husbandry skill. So the more proficient you are in that, or the person you find who's proficient in that, can raise the animal, and then you will have a wrapped, essentially, lifetime on it.
Can you imagine
does
having
that
a
mean
flying
you
mount
also
in this
have a
game?
time requirement to hatch the egg?
No, so essentially the egg does not have a lifetime on it, so you can hold it for a period of time. Or actually, maybe hold on.
Yeah, he's on a dragon right now, Shroud, on my stream. He's riding around a dragon.
That's funny. Yeah, that was good timing. I'm not sure. Actually, I don't remember. I have to check what I wrote in the GDD to remember that. Maybe it does have a time frame, but it's an ample time frame. And then additionally, once the raising is complete, the item comes into your inventory as a mount would, and it's in a wrapped state, which means the timer's not ticking until you first use it. And then when you first use it, the timer ticks.
Okay. So
wait. The timer ticks as in like when it hatches? Are we talking about? Oh, it's life.
No,
it's life.
Yes, once you hatch it, right? That mount now has a lifetime.
Dude, that's right. You are the game that. Are you the game that your character gets old and shit? Was I hearing that?
No. That's
a different one.
That's a different
one. Okay. So I was thinking like you're dragging out a lifetime, dude. Yeah, okay. So yeah, my guy's not gonna die randomly when he's like 80. That's good. Okay.
Is that online and offline time?
What game is that?
That's online and offline time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does that mean? So it's not like very.
That game got canceled.
So my question is like, how many people are actually going to have flying mounts? Does that mean people could constantly farm it so that like there won't only be 10 people flying mounts? It might be 100, 1,000 because people are grinding, trying to get the eggs.
So okay. Now you're reminding me.
My question is how rare
on the hatch.
How rare is the egg?
There's a lifetime on the hatch, and the egg is pretty rare. So it's only going to come from certain legendary world bosses. So in that regard, and then there's a chance only to drop it. So it's going to be rare in that sense. And then yes, that's a very good question, Shroud. So that reminds me. There is a lifetime on the hatching process, and there is a lifetime on the ability to open the wrapped item, essentially, and start that lifetimer. So at any given point in time, you're going to see anywhere from 10 to maybe at max, I would say around 20, based off of the legendary world boss timers, probably 20 people who have flying abilities.
Out of 8 to 10,000 people on your server.
Correct. Well, out of around 50,000.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, 8 to 10,000 concurrency.
Fucking A.
You sell the egg to other people?
You can sell the eggs, yes. Majority of the items that exist in the game, and by majority I mean the vast majority of those items, are tradable. There is not soul bound gear or bind on equip and bind on pickup.
No shit.
The economy is built in a way that requires not only the deconstruction of certain items in order to continue to advance on the crafting side of things, but also the repair system for gear degradation is not some trivial, simple gold sink. They actually require a portion of raw raw and processed materials in order to repair certain types of items. So in that regard, we want to make sure that the economy is a closed system, but is not bound dependent. It is open, so it can be traded and sold.
Okay.
I wonder if
Holy
that's ever gonna mean.
shnikes.
I wonder if that's ever gonna mean
What
like
about,
people are so rich that they could just buy everything and give, you know, all their newcomers insane gear.
So here's the thing, though. There is a significant amount of sinks that exist in the game. So, you know, a lot of games that I've played in the past, and Arcade was one of them, honestly, where there was so much gold generating mechanics and systems available, but there was minimal gold sink systems that were present, which caused this overtime inflation. And inflation's always a mechanic that's difficult to address in MMORPGs, right, over time. But if you present a significant amount of sinks at the higher tier systems, right, so it's not encumbersome on new players, but it does reflect a kind of endgame state to progression and chase. I think those are going to be sufficient. And it comes down to testing. A lot of these systems have to be tested and have to be refined and have to be iterated upon.
Yeah,
What's
that's
the
why I brought up
idea?
the whole wipe thing before, because like, what if it inflates so hard you have no control?
See, but here's the thing, right? If we're talking about the transit of goods through caravans, when a caravan is destroyed, a portion is lost, and then a portion is salvageable through the wreckage by the attackers. So you're actually sinking materials and or processed goods through the caravan system. Additionally, when sieges occur, there could be, I mean, let's say a siege happens on a metropolis, and that metropolis is like a crafting central hub, and people need access to the raw goods and the materials within the warehouses that are not global. Those warehouses for gatherables and processed goods are regional based. So when they come into that city and they declare the siege, nobody knows it's coming, right? As soon as that declaration happens, all of those materials and raw goods are now at risk of being essentially a portion of them being destroyed and the rest of them being then looted by the attackers if the siege is successful. This is that risk versus reward.
Wait, time out. Real quick. Looted?
Yeah. Correct. Yeah. So essentially what happens is each city has what's called a reliquary. And the reliquary begins to spawn unique items for the citizens to take advantage of based on the performance, progression, and achievements that those citizens have within the world. So if your citizens are part of downing a world boss or completing a dungeon in a record time or crafting a legendary item or whatever, all of these different types of progression paths for the cities could result in the production of a relic that exists within the reliquary. Additionally, the warehouse has what are called materials and raw goods that exist within these warehouses because it's a regionalized warehouse. And if the city is destroyed through the node sieging system, there is a wreckage that occurs for registered attackers. And the wreckage in the center of the city can be interacted with by the attackers to receive a portion of those goods and a limited access to the relics that existed in the reliquary. And this is one of the primary motivators for citizens who are not a part of the Alliance network or citizen of a node to essentially siege it, not just to pave the way for new content for nodes that couldn't advance, but also to get the loot. Exactly.
That's interesting, but then there's also a huge incentive for people to defend it. So that's very good. Incentive on
Correct.
both sides is the best way, right?
Yes, exactly. I mean, that's you know, there's a philosophy that's been intrinsic in game design over the past decade, especially for MMORPGs, and that philosophy is everybody's a winner. You get a participation reward, and that may be good for retention of certain groups of players, but it's very bad when it comes to the satisfaction of achieving something that took effort and time or resources. Right.
Absolutely.
So we have a firm philosophy in the risk versus reward type of interaction that should exist in games. And some people call that more hardcore. It's not, as long as you have progression paths that have meaningful achievement for both casual players and hardcore players that have varying degrees of investment required in order to achieve certain things. And that's why we feel comfortable with certain design decisions.
Agree 100% with that. I have another question. I realize that I'm asking questions. When it comes to gear, and if I recall in like Lineage 2, and I have a couple questions. I know they're going to come in like almost the same form, but when it comes to gear, is it all gonna be get best gear through rating, or will there be like random rare drops coming from the world that you'll be able to sell, and or might be fucking great for endgame or something like that? And
Yeah.
on top of that question, I also want to know: is there? I think personally in MMOs, a huge thing is rarities, like the sense of accomplishment, but also the sense that,
Yes.
oh shit, I just got one of the luckiest things ever. Maybe outside of the
Yes.
dragon, obviously, or the flying things. Maybe
Yes.
bosses have certain drops, like World of Warcraft. People go on mount runs, right? Things like that, I think, are really cool. Going and trying to get this thing that is very rare to drop. You can do it on your own. Blah blah blah. Is there any plan on
Yes.
doing things like that?
Yes, absolutely. So one of the biggest things that I've enjoyed in the past, when you have games, okay, so MMORPGs have a lot of the influence in the MMORPG market, at least in the Western world, in North America and Europe, stem from Eastern created games, right? And they port over those Eastern games into North America and Europe, and it's the easiest kind of thing. And there's a lot of RNG that's associated with it. One of the things that I've enjoyed, at least when it comes to like those more grinding oriented games, when you're out in a hunting area and just fighting all day long, if there isn't a chance for you to strike gold, it's boring as hell. If there
Yep.
is a chance for you to strike gold, it's a chase that you're having
Bro.
fun doing, right?
I would grind in BDO. I'd grind pirates forever, just knowing that, hey, I can get one of those items that
there's a
gives me like a
small
huge
chance.
increase in gold. You
Yes,
know what I mean? Oh man, it makes it so
exactly.
much
Yeah.
better.
So in that regard, when you're talking about the drop tables that's associated with like trash mobs out in the world that aren't elite or whatever, yes, there is a loot table that exists. There are going to be random chances for players to strike gold and hit
Hell
great
yeah.
items and whatnot. Those chances will increase based off of the level of the mob, based off of the elite status of the mob, based off of whether or not it's a dungeon boss, a
Where
regional
they're
boss, or
at in the
a
world.
legendary
Yeah,
boss,
yeah.
that kind of thing. And then
Cool.
yeah.
That's perfect. That's perfect. That's perfect. And that comes with like that'll be in forms of anything. Like when it comes to like a loot, it might be a sword. It can be a rare material. It can be
So
whatever.
the rare material the materials are gonna stem primarily from the gathering tree of the
Okay,
artisanship
that's
system.
fine.
And yes, there's the ability to strike gold when harvesting a resource as well. And when you strike that gold for the resource, that resource has the potential to essentially affect the crafting result, the processing result, and then by effect the crafting result of the item you're creating. So legendary crafters will exist in the world, right?
Hell yeah.
On top of that, right, you're going to have systems in place for legendary drops that exist with the bosses, and the legendary crafters will be on par with what the legendary drops will entail. The other thing is, world bosses are going to incorporate a legendary material system as well. So there will be materials that can be dropped from legendary bosses.
Oh.
Those will be required to craft a certain
Crazy shit.
systems. So
So,
my mind is accessing old database right now.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Another
That's
question on when it
okay.
comes to gear. I noticed that a lot of MMOs are going a certain route where it's like, hey, this is pretty much the gear set that you want for your class. Are you looking more at you want a gear set and maybe it does this effect if you have all of them? Or are you looking for more mismatch your whole setup into what you want to do?
So there's definitely sets, and
Okay.
sets when completed of either a particular type or a particular set theme, will create set effects.
Okay.
So you'll have an overarching set effect that reflects whether or not you're all cloth, all leather, all plate, and then you'll have within those categories you'll have sets that exist like the blue scorpion set or
Okay.
whatever. And then on top of that, you can mix match, and the way gear is essentially created, it's situational upon what encounter you're facing. So damage has multiple types, right? You have non-mitigated damage, you have magic-based damage, you have physical-based damage, right?
Okay.
Those types of damage will be when incoming to your character will be mitigated by your certain stats that reflect that damage. So physical defense, magical defense, conversion percentage, conversion into health, that kind of thing. So when you're thinking of like your gear sets that you want to acquire, if you're going to go all cloth, right, you're going to have a higher resistance and damage mitigation to magic type damage. But if you're going up against a physical based encounter, right, and you need that physical damage mitigation, you're going to have a plate set essentially. Probably, I mean, you don't have to, but you could go evasion mechanics as well. But you're going to want to go plate set in order to beefen up your physical damage mitigation.
Yeah, point is diversity, right? Like point
Correct.
is like having to maybe not just, oh, I got the set and we're Gucci now. You know what I mean? It's not ever going to feel like that. Well, I mean, maybe end game, but yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what's
Can you
up.
swap that gear in combat? All of it?
That's a good question.
You cannot swap gear while you're in combat, but you can swap your weapon. So your armor set, you can't swap it. You can swap your weapon out.
Oh my goodness. How many? Okay, so what kind of I'm trying to like correlate. I'm trying to put this into words. Is there going to be like a significant amount of just like normal dungeons, as in 4-man dungeons, or what was it? What was the normal size for your dungeons? Is it eight people?
It's 8-member.
That's
party.
fucking bonkers, by the way. That's actually insane. Okay, that's cool though. I actually really like that because it's almost
And it doesn't mean that
right
you
out the
have
gate.
to. It doesn't mean that you have to have the 8 members in order to accomplish content, but it means that the way we balance combat is around an 8-person party. And you know, there are certain modifiers that are applied to the party incoming experience based on the more players that you have in the party. So it kind of, you know, begins to equal out a little bit. So you're best positioned in order to essentially the best balance you could have as a party is incorporating all 8 base archetypes into your party. So that's going to be your best bet for completing content.
Archetypes, you mean as in classes?
So classes are different. Classes are when you combine with your secondary archetype, and that creates a possible 64 classes. When we say archetype, we're really talking mostly about roles. So essentially, you'll first choose your one of the 8 archetypes, and that's going to be your class that's going to be your archetype that you can't change. So that's tank, ranger, rogue, fighter, cleric, mage, bard, and summoner, right? Now, when you hit halfway point up to level 50, when you hit level 25, you're going to select your secondary archetype, which will combine with your primary to create your class. That secondary archetype isn't going to give you new active skills. You're going to get active skills is going to be from your base primary archetype. However, what it's going to do is it's going to give you augment abilities. So essentially, let's say you're a fighter. And as a fighter, you have an active skill that lets you charge a target over X distance. And upon reaching the target, you deal X damage and some condition modifier. Mm-hmm. If you were to choose mage as your secondary archetype to create your class, you would have access to mage augment. So there's going to be 4 schools of augmentation for each archetype. One of the schools for the mage is the teleport school. You can take that teleport augment, apply it to your charge skill. Now, instead of charging X distance over time, you're going to immediately teleport to the target, dealing X damage and condition modifier. If you were to apply the elemental school to your class ability, you would charge X distance. Upon reaching target, you would set the target ablaze if it's fire. You would electrocute them, right, and deal a damage over time. So in addition to set
abilities a little bit, an augment ability essentially just changing one ability just a little bit, just essentially. Is there going to be? How many of those are going to be? Augment ability is going to be. Oh, you said how many were there again? 3 of them, or 3 classes?
There's four schools per archetype.
Does that mean you could enhance every single ability with one of those 4?
Correct. And in order to enhance an ability, you have to have the applicable correlating level for access to the augment itself. And then upon having access to the augment, you'll have to allocate skill points in order to apply the augment to the active skill. So there's going to be a certain threshold at which you can no longer augment your active abilities based on the decisions you've augmented previous abilities. So you'll have to pick and choose which ones you want to apply the augments towards. And certain augments will have more expense required on the skill point side.
Interesting. So it's almost like there's a chance that no 2 classes will be the same.
Absolutely.
You know, when you
that's the desire.
When you mix the 2 archetypes, it's not just like you are now this, and everyone that mixed those 2 archetypes is this.
Correct.
It's not like that anymore.
It is.
You
It is.
You could change it yourself.
Yes, so it's really driven by your skill point allocation. So your first hurdle on skill points is going to be choosing the active skills you want. The other thing is there's 2 additional skill point allocation trees, the passive tree and the combat tree. So the combat tree reflects your main weapon choice. So let's say you're a one-handed sword user, right? One-handed swords have the ability, so we don't have an auto attack feature, we have an active attack feature. The active attack feature lets you, hit your Q key or whatever key to attack a target within your forward arc or that you have targeted, right? Your weapon familiarity, which is determined by the amount of skill points you allocate to the combat tree, will let you unlock certain proc effects when you attack with your primary weapon, not with a skill, with your primary weapon. So essentially, let's say a dagger has some slashing effects that bleed the target or that cripple the target or do something along those lines. Every time you attack, you have a chance to proc that effect. That effect then can synergize with what your active skills tree has available to it. So let's say your backstab deals 30% additional damage to a bleeding target. If you attack with your main weapon first and the target gets the bleed proc off and you do your backstab skill, then you're synergizing your effects. Additionally, skills synergize with other types of skills as well. So you have to allocate your skill points appropriately.
Interesting.
Okay.
Have
fun balancing that. Oh my.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough.
Gracious. Good luck. It'll be fun.
Oh man.
That definitely will be. Okay. Interesting. What are I guess I don't have any. I already answered that. 40 man raids. Is there gonna be raids that less than 40, or are you guys just gonna allow 40?
You add groups to raids essentially, and you can add 5 groups of 8 to a raid. So you could have a group that's added that only has 1 player, or 5 players, or 4 players, or whatever.
Okay.
So you can't go over 40 then. 40
Correct. You can't go over 40.
Okay.
Oh, one of the other ways, by the way, we were talking earlier about how solo players maybe who don't want to be a part of a guild or whatever, and there's like soft pseudo factions that they can be a part of. For a player's benefit as well, voice over IP is something that's present in the game for groups and raids. So raids can allocate group leaders to participate with the talk option, cool. And you can mute that person or you can mute that function yourself if you don't want to listen or whatever. But it's out of the box present for like pug raids or pug groups, so you don't have to exchange like Discord information. You can chat just
easy
in that
points. Yeah, I like that big time actually. Okay, cool. Oh man. Okay, question. Where do you think this game is percentage-wise from where you see it in your head? Not necessarily where it's at, where you would like it to be.
So, I mean, in my opinion, like, we are going to accomplish every feature we have discussed. The goal here is to create a quality game. A lot of MMOs that I've played in the past have been ruined by a bad launch that the game wasn't ready to launch for. And, MMOs are built off of their initial momentum. And it's important to get shit right when you launch an MMORPG. So our objective and my objective 100% is to make sure that the quality of the game lives up to the standard that makes us as developers proud and that makes our players proud as well. So when we think about how we're going to institute these systems, these mechanics, we're doing so from a point of we need to get it right the first time, and our vision is to institute all of these things.
Hell yeah, good. That's fucking super good. Yeah, I agree on the whole momentum thing for video games. Some people will be like, oh man, I can't tell you how many people tell me to play The Forest today, and I just be like, nah, I'm not playing The Forest, because like 2 years ago, The Forest sucked huge wiener, and apparently when they launched it, and then they made it way better apparently, and added lots of things, and it's such a good game now, but it's like, oh man, that boat has sailed for me already, man. You should have launched it better.
That game's a banger, though, I'm just saying.
Yeah, I know. I hear you talk about it. That's why I brought it up.
It's really fun. But so does that mean like the launch is kind of, I mean, I don't want to say in a foreseeable future, but like you guys don't really know, you're kind of playing it by ear still?
Oh no, we have our internal schedules. We pad our schedule with 30% padding. There's QA time that's there necessary. But the thing that's difficult, and just to give I'll say this, I'll be honest here.
Okay.
There's a lot of conjecture that is out there, on MMORPG subreddit or, with certain content creators, whatever, that talk about Ashes and like, oh, it's a scam or, whatever. And that definitely is difficult to hear, because when you're spending your life for the past 5 years building this game and also funding it personally, it's difficult to hear, those things said. But with that being said, right, the goal here is, as we go through testing, there's gonna be shit that comes up that needs to get fixed, and we don't know what we don't know that's gonna come out of that testing. We can take a look at our schedule. We can look at past experience, and we're gonna estimate out all the tasks that are necessary to complete all these systems and mechanics and whatnot. But that's only as good as until we get into testing and something comes up. Like, okay, I'll give you an example. We got a lot of shit for Apocalypse. But if we had not done Apocalypse as a testing ground for many of the back-end systems and the architectures that we're building in the MMORPG, right, we would not have discovered a significant issue that we did, which we had to re-architect a lot of the back-end systems for. And if we had continued development on the MMORPG until alpha and then discovered that issue, it would have been a whole different beast to fix at that time.
No shit.
So, there's stuff that comes up when you're developing games that you can't predict, that you don't know, just like in life. And our goal again is to make a product that makes us proud and you guys proud. So, it's important that, our schedule is as good as the testing is going to be.
Okay. All right. Well, shit, man. I honestly haven't looked forward to an MMO in a long time, but that's also because usually about 5 minutes into a review of MMO, I find something that I dislike about it, whether it be, and usually 95% of the time it's, oh, there's no open world PvP, and it's just like, well, that's like a killer for me, dude. That's the game breaker. I need to be able to kill who I want to kill. You know what I'm saying? So I really love that about this. I'll be honest. I know that's like a basic bitch thing to really love about MMOs, but yeah, but that's because we've been. It's nobody does it anymore. They think like this huge casual crowd, like we don't want to fucking fight each other or something. We just want to circle jerk each other and fight some monster, and that's it. I don't know, man. It's a breath of fresh air to be able to go through a whole review and like 95% of the things that were said about the MMO that are coming out. You know what I'm saying? So very nice, very intriguing.
When you watch that review, and I sit here chat with you guys, and my other developers are going to watch this, obviously later in the week and whatnot. It means a lot that you guys, take a look and just opine, give your opinion on what we're talking about, right? We're fully funded. We're not looking for people to go like buy the pre-order game or anything. We don't care about that. We offer that stuff because people like it. But when we talk about essentially you giving your feedback, you telling us what resonates with you, people in your stream kind of commenting on they like this, they don't want that, they want the combat to get better, the visuals need to do this or whatever. We take all that stuff in with a grain of salt. We go through it, we analyze it, we have our community team go through it. It means a lot to us, and we really enjoy essentially people just giving their opinions on stuff.
Yeah, hell yeah, man, hell yeah. I'm excited, man. This is cool. I like the transparency. I appreciate you coming on and answering some questions. To be honest, that doesn't really happen very often. It's because I'm not. I've obviously me and Shroud aren't super good at this.
No, I enjoy it. I don't like the formal interview stuff. I'm more like talking just like casually about our experiences, what we like, and shit like that.
Yeah, because we kind of bounced around like one topic we're on this, and then we 180 somewhere else. So it's not very formal kind of thing, but it's nice.
Oh, I'm so stoked to just see like a little gnome looking motherfucker, dude, or whatever he is, a dwarf. I'm happy about that. I like that. I like the diversity and huge versus small characters and everything in between. You know what I mean? I love it. Dude.
What did you say, Shroud? Is there going to be what?
Add-ons. Is that a thing?
Oh, yeah.
At the moment, add-ons we're not allowing. So,
listen, I know add-ons
that's a
are
sore
great.
Subject.
Yes. I'm kind of with you on that. I don't like the idea of creating any advantages for people.
Yes, that's my feeling too. So it's twofold. One, it's like, remember the old days, that nostalgia when you didn't have fucking add-ons that told you everything that's happening, and you could just mechanically, digest what an encounter is. You had trial and error. You messed up and got wiped the first time, and you had to like manually look and watch what the hell's happening.
Bro, the idea of like boss mods and like all that stuff, like I'm just not a fan of that stuff.
It's way too easy now.
Yeah, so no matter which way you guys go, I understand, but like that's I'm in your corner on that one.
I was watching one of my devs real quick. I was watching one of my devs during lunch. He was playing a game, and I walked past him and I was like, "Is that even a game?" Because his entire screen was filled with like add-on information, and in the very center was this little tiny square of a game that you could see his character in. And I was just asking him, I was like, "How is that fun for you?"
It's insane. It's insane. I've seen some WoW players that like fill their screen to the fucking brim. It's bonkers. Yeah, like I said, I'm all for everybody playing on equal grounds. I'm all for having not the computer tell me exactly where everything is. Unfortunately in ESO, that's what we're doing right now. Actually, we freaking got a map add-on to just tell me where everything in the game is, essentially. So it's like, it just takes away from it a lot. Actually, it takes away from it a lot. So yeah, I agree 100% with no add-ons. I'm in your corner on that one, no matter which way it ends up going. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because, I would trust that you guys know what you're doing on that field, right? I mean, it may be at the very least you can allow UI, like small, like little things like that. Who knows? But I do agree. You give too much information with add-ons, and then what's the point of playing and learning when it tells you it all, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, bro, the idea of, the dude's doing a fire breath in 3 seconds. It's like, okay, thanks, man. Who's saying this? We have a narrator watching our fight, you know? But yeah, dude, I appreciate it, man. It's super cool to talk to you, and it's good to know that there's not. Listen, I can't even classify this as a hardcore or a casual MMO, and that's exactly how it should be. You know what I'm saying? It should just be an MMO, and that should come with it. You know, you feel me on that? So, and I'm happy. I'm happy that it has that. Trust me, bro, I've been missing Terra so much, just being able to kill whoever I want to. I keep going back to this, but that's my huge number one.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyways, Shroud, do you have anything left to say? Add questions?
No, I mean I can sit here all day, but you're the one streaming.
True.
Dude. I'm retired. I'm vacation. I'm vacation like baby.
Retired.
You gotta go, you know?
Free agent. Relax.
Hey, I appreciate taking the time. By the way, Summit Shroud. I always enjoy talking about MMOs, and I love talking about Ashes. So appreciate the opportunity of chatting with you.
Yeah, it's good to get the specifics because honestly, I vaguely just thought that Ashes of Creation was, I don't know, just kind of on autopilot heading forward, and people had forgotten about it. And I'm happy to hear that that's not the case, honestly. So,
as we enter new testing phases, it's going to get ramped up a little bit, I think, in the community, and people will see what's happening.
Oh hell yeah! Oh hell yeah! Keep me in mind for any sort of participation that could be done on stream. I would really love it.
I know a guy. I could probably get you into an alpha or something.
Oh, you know a guy? Sweet. That'd be perfect. That'd be perfect. Hey man, we appreciate your time, man, and kind of like setting the record straight, at least for my channel.
Absolutely. Awesome.
Hell yeah. Hey, thanks, brother, man.
Yep. Take care, guys.
All right, man. See ya.
Later.
All right, boys. That was cool. That was cool. Dude, this is the first MMO I think I've been excited for in a long time. Huge shout out to the Lazy Peon for kind of just putting this back into my lap. I appreciate it. Again. And, thank you guys for everybody, tuning in and getting the dev to come in and say what's up. And, hell yeah. Ashes of Creation. Look at this little motherfucker. I want to be a gnome, dude. Or a dwarf, or whatever it is.
Before I go here, I just want to say thanks for including me in that. I appreciate that. It's really cool.
Yeah, bro. I wasn't interviewing by myself. I'm a doofus, you know? I needed extra questions in between my stupid questions. Dude, my questions are always just about combat and, like, fucking, like, just want to know how good the game's going to feel in PvP and, yeah. But, dude, there's a lot of crazy shit. That video is very intriguing.
It's pretty in-depth, for sure.
I like the idea that he played Lineage 2 and got some ideas from that because I love Lineage 2. I thought that PvP was super cool.
I have a lot.
He's got it. He's got ideas from everything.
Feels like EFT.
Inspired by everything.
Yeah, let's come AoE.
Feels like EFT, man. Dev style, at least, you know.
Yeah, I just went over by the tank.
True.
This motherfucker got God mode. I think Steven's got God mode. I think they all may have.
That's how EFT started.
True.
EFT was just like we're tired of like other passion project. We're tired of other games doing it wrong. We're gonna do it right. So that's
exactly.
Kind of what
this is very interesting. It looks like their numbers are pretty low too. I mean, they're sitting here fighting a dragon. This motherfucker's still hitting for like 50s with his AoE. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like overdone on numbers.
Where'd you go? I don't see you.
Yeah, but this is just like the testing, you know.
True,
Like,
true,
we
true,
don't know
true.
what level they are.
Focus
We
the
don't know if they all
web.
have God mode. We don't
Bring
know
I
if
mean,
they have,
this
you know,
this
whatever,
motherfucker has
right?
a ton of abilities.
Yeah, so it's all testing. That's one thing that's gonna be really hard.
Oh shit, that flame breath looks sick. Pretty cool. I'm stoked, man. I'm super stoked. Fuck. I hate when I get excited about video games that are far out. Dude, honestly, the Lazy Peons video was so good.
Yeah, his videos are always insanely
Always
informative.
spot on. I like his videos a lot.